Lesson 7, circular interpolation, and the workbook. I've got it right here. There it is. All right. So basically everything we've done up until now has been straight line movements, linear moves, G1s. G1, 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 G1. Which is great, but I talked about the other day, we don't want to form radii with the radius of the tool. It's a bad machining practice. You get mediocre results. Usually you get tool chatter because the tool buries into those corners, so you don't get a very good cut. It's going to reduce your tool life. And most of the time, you're going to deal with radiuses that aren't a type of tool that you're going to want to have. You're going to have bigger radiuses, like right here. We've got a big 2.5 inch circle that we need to mill. So external radiuses, you can't really form them, okay, using straight line moves. You can't do externals. You got to have an arc move. So to talk about that, basically, we've got two things we're going to be doing here. One's those G&M codes that we've talked about, G2 and G3. Okay, G2 is circular interpolation clockwise. G3, circular interpolation counterclockwise. Okay? Clockwise is always going to come first. Clockwise is always going to come first. So if you're seeing these on the quiz and you're struggling with them, just know that they're 2 and 3. Clockwise first, and then counterclockwise, the reverse, is the second one. Same thing with spindle. Spindle, M3, turns it on clockwise. The next one, M4, turns it on counterclockwise in reverse. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind, that the clockwise will always be the first of those codes. Okay? All right. So we need to know our direction of travel. Then we got to tell it the programmed end point of the arc. Basically, where's the end point of the arc? Where's the X and Y end point? We're in the XY plane. So that's the next thing we got to tell it. And then we've got to tell it the arc center, okay, which is the incremental distance from the start of rotation to the center of rotation. And this is where this workbook, this section, and us going through this workbook is really to help you understand that. Okay? We're going to use I, J's, and K's in this lesson. And you see there it says you can use I, J, K, or R for the radius. The R for the radius is easier because you don't have to look at it and say, is it going negative or positive? Is it in the X direction or the Y direction or the Z direction if you're doing like a 3-dimensional arc, okay, which would be a K. But you don't have to decipher that. It's always an R when it comes to arc moves using an R value. It's just an R and whatever the positive arc value is. Why do they have I, J's, and K's then? Why do they have I, J's, and K's? Most post processors post out vector format code. Okay, the I's, J's, and K's are vector callouts. That's what it's all about. It's all about what the post processor, what the CAM system is going to do. And if we're going to be able to decipher a CAM system code, we need to understand what those are. Now, that being said, they function just like what we talked about on one of the first days. We've got our standard axes, which are X, Y, Z. All right? We've got our multi-axes, which are A, B, C, meaning that a multi-axis rotation in the A means it's rotating around the X-axis. If you're rotating around the Y-axis, it's a B-axis rotation. And if you're rotating around the Z, it's a C-axis rotation. The alphabet. Everybody knows their alphabet, right? The alphabet game. That's all this is. So all you got to do is keep track of those, because the circular incremental calls are I, J, and K, which means that from the starter rotation to the center rotation, if that's in the X direction, it's going to be an I. If from the starter rotation to the center of the rotation is in the J direction, or in the Y direction, it's a J. And then like a 3-dimensional arc, meaning that we're doing it like this, if it's in the Z direction, it would be a K. All right? We aren't going to do any Ks in here manually programming. You don't have to worry about that. The only time I've seen a K on a manual program was the Skills USA national competition like 2 years ago. It had a groove in the bottom of the slot that was like a 3D radial groove. And I had a student that was going to nationals, and the practice part came in, and it had that in there, and he was like, I have no clue how to do that. I said, yeah, you do. All it is we're switching planes. We're going to go to the G18 or the G19 plane, and we're going to use a K call, and then you just tell your tool you're doing an arc move like this instead of like this. Okay, now, it wasn't that simple. I didn't just say it, and all of a sudden he went, oh, yeah, I got it. No, we had to do it. I'd show him. We had to do a couple of them. You know, seeing it helps you believe it and understand it. That's what we're going to do today. We're going to work through these workbook pages together. Each page I'm going to do one, then I'm going to have you fill out your workbooks, and then I'm going to have you give me the answers that you come up with. Okay, we're going to work through them together. All right.
Are those a lot of points?
What's that?
Are those points, the workbook problems?
Are they points?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Why?
I just want, because I'll see if I can get those made up.
Do you have your workbook with you?
Yeah, but I didn't really get a point, and I could not stay awake after
Yeah,
that last week.
but you need to have your workbook open to lesson 7 right now.
Okay.
We're doing that together in class. So yeah, everybody needs their workbook open to lesson 7. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to program this part right here up on my screen for you. Okay? This is an example part that's in your book, and I'm going to program this, and I'm going to kind of explain it while I'm going through it. You don't have to, I don't want you trying to type it along, and I'm not going to help you troubleshoot it. If you want to type this up later, you can. But right now, I just kind of want you paying attention to me doing it up here, okay? All right, so I'm going to take my lesson 6 part. I'm going to do a save as. I'm going to create me a new lesson 7 library here, which you probably won't even have a lesson 7 folder unless you decide you want to go back and do this part. Lesson 7, CNC mill. And then inside that, I'm going to call it my lesson 7 example part. And I'll hit save. Okay. I'll go in here, change a few things. This is just going to be 700, I'm going to call it, for lesson 7. No real part number. Lesson 7. Example part. Circular interpolation milling. Okay, we're going to use this same tool. I'm just going to mill around this part. Now I do need to, this part, if you look at the book, this part's 4 inches by 4 inches, so I'm going to change the stock size real quick. Go to part setup. I'm going to go to more, stock geometry. I'm going to make it 4 by 4 for this part. Hit save. Okay. And then I'm going to start milling this part out. So my X start point, I'm just milling straight up that left side of the part. Okay, so I'm going to start at X minus 0.25, Y minus 0.5 down below the part here. Minus 0.25, Y minus 0.5. And then I'm going to get rid of all these points from the part we just did. Whoa! That's why I like to use the shift option, because then I don't accidentally get too much of it. I'm going to delete all that out. All right. I'm going to mill around this part. So to start out, I'm in G1. I'm in linear. So the first move I'm going to go to, I'm going to come up the part all the way to 4.25. So I'm going to go to Y 4.25. I'm going to set my feed to my feed rate of 91. And then I do a linear move, and this is where people get confused. The move to the arc is a linear move. It's the move through the arc that is your circular move. Through the arc, not to the arc. So this move's a G1 still, coming to right here. So that's going to be X. If this is 4 over to here, That's a 1 inch radius, so I would basically subtract that from the 4. I'm going to go to x3. And that's the start of this arc. Okay, now the arc move. This one's given to you in your books. You got the line down there. That's what it's going to look like. But I'm going to walk through it just like I can't see that down there. I'm going to act like that's invisible to me. This arc move, it's going clockwise. If it's clockwise, it's a G2. So the start of the line is a G2. The second thing that we need is the X and Y endpoint of the arc. So the X endpoint, if this is 4 inches here, and right here is where we're going to, that's the radius of the tool further over in X. So the X is going to be 4.25. The Y value for right here, if this is 4 inches up here, and we're 1 inch down because that radius is 1 inch right here, the Y would be 3 inches. Okay, and it should be matching right up with that highlighted section down there in the corner, I know. Now this is the part that's the fun part, the I, J, and K. I promise I won't make you do this every time. We're going to go through these first couple lessons with it, and then we're going to use radius values. Okay, I don't want to get you so confused with I, J's, and K's that you can't write the program, but I do want you to understand how they work. All right, so the I or the J is the incremental distance from the start of rotation, so that would be right here, to the center of rotation, which would be right here. So from right here to the center of rotation, that is in the Y direction, so that would be a J, and it is negative from the start to the center, 1.25. The X is lined straight up with it, so the I would be 0, the J would be negative 1.25. In an incremental situation, if it's 0, you don't have to put it. I don't have to put the I there for that to work. Okay, I don't have to put the I there for that to work. In the book, in the stuff that these walkthroughs and these tutorials, you're going to see every one of them pretty much has an I or a J0 for whichever one's not changing. Okay. So if I draw that now, and there's that arc. Okay, there's that arc move. Now, the next move after that, the next move after this is a line moves straight down from here to right here. Okay, so it's a linear move. So the first thing I have to make sure I do, what? G1, yes, G1. We got to have a G1 there to tell it, all right, hey, I know we just did an arc move, but now I want to go straight again. So I got to put a G1 to start out. And then I'll put my Y, which is, if it's 2 inches from here up to here, and on my radius down from there, so it'd be 2 inches minus 0.25. So my Y would be 1.75. If I draw that, it looks pretty good. We just made our way to right there. But let's say I forget the G1. Let's say I forget the G1. I don't put that in there. It'll still draw, but it's going to give me something funky. Like that. So we talked about it the other day. You know, as we're programming, every couple lines of code, draw it, make sure you're on the right track. You're going to get confident, and I like to call it cocky because I do it too. You're going to plot all your points, and then you're going to sit down and you're just going to code. You're just going to write the whole thing. And then you're going to draw it after you plug in all the points and think you have it all right. And then you're going to have a disaster on your screen because you're going to have 2 things or maybe 3 things that aren't right, but it makes the whole thing look wonky. Okay, it doesn't look right at all. And then you got to start going through and trying to figure out where did you go wrong. So every couple lines of code, don't be afraid to jump over to the draw screen, the verify screen, hit play, make sure it's moving where it's supposed to. Like right there, I know that I forgot to do something there. So I'm going to throw my G1 in. My next move is the line move from here to right here. So I need the X value for right here. So that would be this 2 inches to here, plus this radius right here, because that's how far it is over to where the X lines up. So that radius is 1 inch. It's a 1 inch internal radius. So it's going to go to X3. The internal arc. I'll call this my external arc up here. Okay. Then, this time we're going counterclockwise. So G2 is clockwise. G3 is going to be the start of my code here. We're going to this endpoint right here. So if this is 2 inches to this wall plus the radius, we're going to X 2.25. If this is 2 inches up to here, we're basically down this radius from there. So if this is 2 inches up minus the 1 inch radius, we're going to Y 1 inch. And then we got to tell it our I or our J. Now this is where these tool radiuses are fun, I know, okay? We're on the inside of the radius, so we have to subtract our tool radius from the part radius when you're cutting an internal arc. So if the part radius is 1 inch, we subtract our 1/4 inch tool radius, and we get 0.75. So it's from here to the start, from the start of rotation to the center rotation, it's once again in the negative Y direction, 0.75. So it would be a J negative 0.75. In the example, it has an I0 again, but I don't need that. I don't need that I0. You can put it, but I don't have to have it. Okay, an incremental 0 is basically a waste of keystrokes. Then I'll go ahead and mill down. Okay, we'll mill down the part. We're coming down to Y minus 1/4 inch, and then we'll go back to 0. So I gotta have my G1. I gotta switch back to linear. Gotta switch back to linear to go to Y minus 0.25, and then I'll go over to X minus 0.5 off the part. And there's a little example of kind of what this looks like. Okay, the way these arc moves. Direction, the X and Y endpoint, the incremental distance from the start of rotation to the center of rotation are the things we have to do an arc move. Okay. All right. So let's go to this page in your workbook. I'm going to give you 2 minutes because it shouldn't take you much time at all to fill these in on this page. All you got to do is tell it, is it a G2 or a G3? And that can be decided just by looking at whether or not it's clockwise or counterclockwise. Okay? G2s on clockwise arcs, G3s on counterclockwise. Those ought to be quick and easy. All right. Let me get my little thing so I can fill this in with you while we work through them. Okay. On number 3 there, Reagan. Counterclockwise, what's going to be? G2 or G3? G3. G3. Come on. There we go. Jack. Counterclockwise, D to B. G3. Mueller. Clockwise. G2. I don't care which points it's going from. It doesn't matter. All that really matters for that first code is whether or not it's clockwise or counterclockwise. Okay, that's all that matters on those. Okay? All right. Now, on the next page, it wants to know the X and Y endpoints for each, or location for each point. So A, if this is the origin right in the middle, A's x value is 0. A's y value is this radius, which is 2.5, plus the radius of the tool, which is a 1/2 inch radius. So it's a 3 inch radius, which it gives you that too. So its y value is 3. So take the next couple minutes and give me the x and y value for each of the others, working around that center point. All right. Let's start here. Give me the x and y for B, Blaine.
X 3, Y is nothing.
0y. Spencer, how about for C? What's my x and y?
X is 0, Y is 3.
Positive 3?
Or negative 3.
Negative 3. There we go. And give me D there, Mr. Hedrick.
X is negative 3, Y is 0.
Negative 3, y 0. Okay. Those aren't too bad, right? Okay. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Next page is the I's and the J's. So the next 4 of you get the challenging stuff, what I consider the challenging stuff. So A to the center of the circle, the I, there is no X, it's lined up straight above it in X. So it's an I 0. But from the A to the center is negative 3 inches. So it's a J negative 3 for the J there, because it's in the Y direction, negative 3 inches. Make sense? Okay. Take the next couple minutes and get the I or the J for B, C, and D. Let's fill those in. Remember, it's the incremental distance. If it's in X, it's an I. If it's in Y, it's a J, and positive or negative based on which direction it is, from the start to the center. All right, so we'll start out. Give me my I and my J. Aaron, for B.
I is negative 3, J 0.
J 0. So from B to the center is in the negative X direction, 3 inches. So it would be an I, negative 3. J, the Y is the same, so the J is 0. Okay. Fulkerson, give me my I and J for C to the center.
I is 0 and J is 3.
I is 0, J is positive 3. So the X, they're lined straight up, so the X doesn't change, so it's I 0, J, positive 3. Noah, you get the last one here. D to the center.
I is 3, J 0.
J 0. Okay? This is all, you're probably going, man, this stuff's super simple, but just remember, we're only trying to learn the concepts right now. We're going to get into more complex parts that everything's not just based off the 0 being in the middle. As a matter of fact, that's the next one. The next page. So let's go to the next page in the workbook. Okay. Oh, no, it's not the next page. This is the actual code. So I'm going to do C to D with you, and then I'm going to let you, using your other workbook pages, plug in what it wants to know. From C to D going clockwise, I know for a fact that the first thing it wants is a G2, clockwise. Then the next thing it wants is the endpoint, the X and Y endpoint for D. So if I look at D, D is X minus 3, Y 0. So that's what I would put next, X minus 3, Y 0. And then it wants the incremental distance from the starter rotation to the center rotation. So that's from C to the center. So it's lined straight up in X, so the I is 0. And from C to the start of rotation in the center is a J positive 3. That's the line of code for that one. So go ahead, and I'm going to give you a few minutes here for this to put your clockwise or counterclockwise, your X and Y endpoint, which is going to be the endpoint. So this is going to be the C location, this is going to be the A location, this is going to be the C, and then your I or your J values that you need. Try to do those. Okay, I'll give you 4 minutes. Don't feel rushed. We're going to do them together. So. It is time to go through these. Keegan, you're first. Let's do from D to C here. G3. X0. Y negative 3. I3, you're right, yep. J0. Yep, you're good. Because it's from D to the center of rotation. It's 3 inches in the X direction, so it's an I3, J0. Okay? All right.
Why again is the X not included?
What's that?
Why is the X not included? Why do we not put like X pop 3 on there?
Right here?
Yeah.
It'd be X0 because it's the end point is C. So it's the C. This is X0.
Okay.
Good? Okay. Y minus 3.
Yeah, we're doing increment.
Yeah. Well, these are absolute. The absolute value for the endpoint. The incremental is this right here. Is the I or the J. Incremental distance from the start to the center. Okay. All right. Next one. Let's have our next one there for the A to A. What do you got? G2 clockwise. X0. Y3. I0. J negative 3. So what if I told you this? What if I told you, since you're doing a full loop, literally all you would need there is that right there.
Your stalkers.
All you need is the G2 and the J3, because your X and Y endpoint's back right where you're at. So if you don't put a new X and Y endpoint, it just assumes you're coming back to the same spot. You don't need the I because it's 0. So all you really need to tell it is the incremental distance to the center. Now, because the book's got it all laid out with everything, we're going to go ahead and put it all. But in the code, truthfully, I could just put G2, J minus 3, and the machine's going to give me the same result. Okay? With all of it there, as long as I type it all right, it's going to give me the same result. Because I'm coming right back to where I'm at. All right, Faith, let me have the last one there.
G3.
G3 counterclockwise.
X0.
X0. Y negative 3. I negative 3. J0. So the X and Y endpoint C is X0, Y negative 3. The incremental distance from B to the center is in the negative X direction, so it's going to be an I negative 3 inches, J0. Okay. Starting to clear up any for everybody? A little bit? Well, Mr. Shetterly, you're next, because you get to do the fun one. All right. So those are what it's like when it's right in the middle. Okay. Now the next page, the origin of the circle is at X5, Y5. Now let me just tell you a little secret there. That only affects the X and Y endpoint of the circle. The incremental distances are all going to be the exact same. because the incremental distance from the starter rotation to center rotation has nothing to do with the absolute center of the circle. So like for C to D here, it's going clockwise. G2, D. If this is 5, 5 in the middle, that means we're 3 inches over an X from there. So the X and Y is going to be X2, Y5. X2, Y5, because it's 3 inches back from the 5, 5 middle to here in X. So we have to subtract 3 inches from our X, but our Y is still 5. That's the endpoint. Right? Am I doing the right one? Yeah, I am. Okay, just making sure. I had a few people kind of, what's he doing there? All right, but the C, the start point, that's still I0, J positive 3. Because the incremental distance from C to the center rotation is 3 inches in the positive Y direction, nothing in X, so it's I0, J positive 3. Okay. Take a couple minutes and do the last 3 there. Work through these together. If you got them, awesome. If you don't, we'll get through it. Don't worry. Alex?
For
D to C.
G3.
G3.
X2.
Oops. Hold on a sec. Sorry. G3. Okay.
X2. Y5. I plus 3. And then
Slow down. So the C is our endpoint. Okay. So you think you got your backwards there. The X should be
X5 and Y2.
Y2. There you go. All right. Then the I or the J,
The I is going to be plus 3.
positive 3, J 0. Okay. The X, we're right at 5X still. We're down 3 inches from the Y5, so the Y is going to be 2 inches positive. The I, incremental from the start to the center, is in the X positive 3 inches, so it's an I positive 3. There's no change or variation in Y, so the J is 0. Okay. All right, Rachel, how about from A to A? G2. X5. Y8. You got it. Yep. J negative 3. You got it. Okay. All right. We're looking pretty good there. Got one more to go and we're back up here. You got it, Reagan? No? Let's do it together, all right?
All right.
Okay. Counterclockwise, so we need to start it out with a
Oh, it's G3.
G3. We know that part, so let's get the low-hanging fruit first. Then we need the endpoint for C. So C's endpoint, the X is 5.
5.
The Y is 3 inches down from the center.
Should be -3.
No. Positive, so, or absolute, sorry. It's an absolute value. So since it's 3 inches down from 5, it'd be 2.
Oh, 2.
Yep. So it'd be a X5, Y2. And then the incremental distance from B to C, or from B to the center, this is B here. The incremental distance from there to the center is -3 inches in the X direction.
Okay.
So it'd be an I, -3, J 0.
B to the center.
Okay. The incremental distance from the starter rotation to the center rotation. All right. Is everybody's brains melting yet? Yeah.
Yeah.
The B to C, X and Y. Okay, so C is what we're looking at for the endpoint. So C, since C is lined straight up with the origin here in X, the X is 5, but we're 3 inches down from there. So if this is 5 inches positive and we're 3 inches down, we got to subtract the 3 from the 5. So that's where we get the Y2. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. And then the I is from the start point, which is B. It's negative 3 inches to the center of rotation in the X direction. So it's an I negative 3. There's no variation in Y, so the J is 0. Okay? All right. Your assignment is the next workbook page. And this is the last page you got to do in this, but I'm going to check this at the start of class next time. I want you to try to work through it. If you don't feel like you're getting it, but I definitely want you to double check your answers on Cam Instructor. Okay, jump on Cam Instructor, use the videos, double check your answers, make sure you got them right. If you're going, okay, that's the answer, but why? Watch the video. Okay, if you look at it and you're like, okay, that's the answer, but why is it the answer? Because I don't understand that. Watch the video. We are going to come in here on Thursday, and we're going to go into lesson 8 and start writing programs to cut circular interpolation. We're going to keep on trucking right into the next two. The next 2 lessons are circular interpolation. So we got that one lesson basically for straight line milling. We got 3 lessons to help us really kind of hone in on circular interpolation. Okay, there's 3 lessons we're going to work through together. Yeah, we're going to do a couple programs together, and I'm going to have you do one yourselves, but it'll be just like what we did with the straight line milling, where we do 2 of them back to back, and then all you got to do is replot the points and make the adjustments to the points. Okay. Our goal is, shortly after midterm, the midterm program, I'm pretty sure it's a straight line milling program. I'll have to look. I don't think if it does, it only has like 2 arcs on it for you to do, but nothing you shouldn't be able to do after we've got 2 weeks under our belt of working through these together. Okay. Questions? All right. So study G&M codes, feeds and speeds. I'll give the new chart. I got it done, but I didn't get it printed. I'll give the new chart out. We'll work through a couple together before I have you do the quiz on Thursday, and then we're going to jump in here. I'm going to check this, and then we're going to keep on working on these and just keep doing them together until everybody gets it. Okay. All right.